I want to talk about all of the teams that are left in the playoffs and who I think you should be rooting for as a Seahawks fan. And I have some criteria. I'll tell you the criteria that I used. I made a spreadsheet. I'm not going to share it on the screen because I don't want to make you all hate me even more. Maybe should I? Nah, I'm not going to share it. I'm trying to talk myself into sharing a spreadsheet. Nobody wants that. So I'm going to tell you the order first, or I'm going to tell you the criteria first, and then we'll go down the order. The order is, are they a Seahawks rival? That's a negative point. Do we want a Seahawks rival to win the Super Bowl? Absolutely not. Are they a divisional opponent? Are they a conference opponent? Those are two separate categories. So a divisional opponent is yes, which means 2 negative for 2 points against them. There's only one of those, luckily. Do they have a storied history? Like, is this an organization that's got a bunch of Super Bowls and great quarterbacks, and we should not want them to win because they are just stacking up organizational accolades? Did they beat the Seahawks in 2024? Do they have an elite quarterback? These are all things that we're rooting against also. These are all points against. And then points for underdog. Is the team an underdog? Which seems like it would be the very inverse of having a storied history. I don't think it is. I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive, because I think you can have not a storied history and just be kind of a generic team we don't care about, or a team that's actually a really good team that we're like, yeah, technically you don't have a storied history, but you're not really an underdog because you're a really great team. I think the Buffalo Bills, for example, I don't think are an underdog, nor do they have what I would call a storied history, or at least not storied in the way that I'm talking about for this. And then there's another element, unfortunately, is has their city incurred a recent tragedy? Which, of course, there are 2 Los Angeles teams playing in the playoffs, and certainly you can have a soft spot in your heart for those teams without liking them that much. In 2001, I remember being like, it would be really beautiful if the Yankees won the World Series this year. And then Luis Gonzalez hit a game-winning single that won it for the Diamondbacks. I was like, okay, well, that's actually probably better for baseball, or for me anyway, the way that I consume baseball. So I guess I will go back to front. The least rootable team to the most rootable team, and I'll give you some kind of some information why. Obviously, I think for a lot of people, the Kansas City Chiefs are at the bottom. I think if you're a Seahawks fan, so this is a high score is bad, low score is good in this calculation that I've put together, and each one of those categories is only worth 1. And the maximum points a team can score is 6 points, because there's like 6 points against, 2 points for. The Green Bay Packers in last place with 5 points. I do consider them a Seahawks rival. They're not a divisional opponent, but they are a conference opponent. They have one of the most storied histories in all of football. I'm sick of it. Get some new blood in there. They did beat the Seahawks in 2024, and where I think there is some controversy, but it is unimportant to their ranking because the next team didn't beat them by, or I guess lost to them, beat them by 2 points, is, do they have an elite quarterback? Is Jordan Love an elite quarterback? For the purposes of this count, I gave him a yes. I gave him a yes as an elite quarterback. Could we debate that? Is he an elite quarterback? I don't know. I will say it's an alarming argument for needing an elite quarterback, this list that we're going to go through and who's in the playoffs. So yeah, Green Bay Packers, the least rootable team for Seahawks fans in this postseason. In second place and now I gave them second place, or I guess second to last, least rootable. So second least rootable. I counted them as a Seahawks rival, a former AFC West team that played the Seahawks in the AFC West every year, 2 times a year. They have a storied history, especially their recent history, and they have an elite quarterback. The Kansas City Chiefs are third, have 3 points. I'm messing this up a lot. They have 3 points. They are second least rootable for Seahawks fans. you could argue at this point, like, I don't know if Kansas City would consider the Seahawks a rival. I'm maybe borrowing a little bit of, they might be a 2.5 point team. I don't feel super strongly. I could see the argument of that they are not actually a Seahawks rival, which actually is all the more impressive that Green Bay would then beat them by 3 points. Green Bay would be the least rootable team while doubling their next foe. Okay, the next 6 teams are all tied with 2 points. We'll go through them. Individually. We have rivals of the Seahawks. I gave credit to that to the Rams, the Steelers, the Broncos. Conference opponent, obviously the Eagles, the Commanders, the Vikings, the Rams. Storied history, the Steelers and the Broncos. Now, I'm going to tell you, I could be compelled to say that the Commanders, under a previous name, under Joe Gibbs, deserve to be considered to have a storied history. Their history meant nothing to me as a Seahawks fan, and it might just be because they were good when the Seahawks were bad. Also, I think that any good they had in their history was probably undone to some degree by the constant controversy around their past ownership group and their mascot. So, anyway, did they beat the Seahawks in 2024? The Rams did one game. The Seahawks won the other game, obviously, but they ended up beating the Seahawks for the division, so I feel fine about that. Minnesota Vikings beat the Seahawks. The Bills beat the Seahawks. And then, do they have an elite quarterback? I gave elite quarterback, and this might be controversial. You could tell me which side of this is controversial. I gave elite quarterback to Jalen Hurts of the Eagles. I gave elite quarterback to Josh Allen. I don't think that's going to be controversial. I gave elite quarterback to Jaden Daniels. By the way, there's so many Jaylens and Jadens. I'm like, Jaden Daniels, Jesus Christ. Talking into a microphone creates, you mess up in ways that you never thought you would. I'll go back and listen, and I'm like, oh, that's not what I meant to say. That's not what I thought I was saying in that moment. That's not what my memory was me saying. Although I do want to acknowledge, by the way, I am wearing a Green Bay NFL draft. The NFL draft is being held at Lambeau Field in April. I was going to try to get out there. Beautiful experience. I talked about it on this podcast. Still, even with that, even with my great time at Lambeau Field, the team I am rooting the least for in these NFL playoffs. So yeah, I did not give elite quarterback to maybe the one controversial one would be not counting Matt Stafford. I could see an argument against that. I didn't give it to Bo Nix either. I did give it to Jaden Daniels. I did not give it to Bo Nix. An argument could be made that Bo Nix had an equally impressive season. I will not be making that argument, nor do I think the upside is the same for Bo Nix. So I didn't count Bo Nix, did count Jaden Daniels, no Sam Darnold, no Russell Wilson, believe it or not. I went back and forth on Jalen Hurts. You can tell me what you think if he's an elite quarterback or not. I think he's very good. The Eagles have had a lot of success under him. Not enough to be not enough to have a storied history, I would say, by this silly rationale, but underdogs. I gave the Rams because they're at kind of the end of the window. You got late stage Stafford. Obviously, they're going to be because of the fires in Los Angeles. They're going to be. I think they're moving their first round game to Arizona. And also like they get the recent tragedy point, unfortunately. So all those teams have 2 points. There's one team, by the way. There's no tie for first, but there is a 4-way tie for second most rootable. I feel good about rootable, by the way, as an adjective. So a rival of the Seahawks, we're going to start to see less of these categories filled. I don't know if that's obvious. I gave the Los Angeles Chargers rivalry with the Seahawks because an old AFC West rivalry, you got to be, I don't know that there's an active rivalry. I don't know that the players feel a rivalry, but I think the fans, for Seahawks fans, especially longtime Seahawks fans, you probably feel some rivalry towards the then San Diego, now Los Angeles Chargers. The conference opponent, the Lions, the Bucks, that's it. The other two teams are that tied for second are AFC teams. Beat the Seahawks in 2024. The Detroit Lions beat the Seahawks in 2024. Underdog. The Lions are an underdog. Even though they're a very good team, it's obviously a team that never won a Super Bowl, has just been a perennial loser. And so even though they are a very good team and they've been good for a couple of years, I'm counting them as an underdog. And then obviously the recent tragedy category, the Chargers get the point in the recent tragedy category, which leaves, by the way, a team who, so these teams all scored 1 point net when you take out the negatives for the negative contributions for underdog for recent tragedy. By the Lions and the Chargers. This other team almost scored a -1 because the Houston Texans are, I would consider them an underdog, an expansion franchise. They're on their how manyth quarterback? They've had somewhat limited franchise success. Second-year quarterback that had, this is where there's controversy. By the way, I gave elite quarterback to Baltimore, gave it to the Chargers. You can argue with me on the Chargers. Is Justin Herbert an elite quarterback? I can see the argument against it for sure. I could see them deserving to be, I'll tell you, if the guy that I picked for the Texans as an elite quarterback, if CJ Stroud is an elite quarterback, Justin Herbert certainly is. If he's not, you start to get into the argument for Herbert. I think Herbert's probably a little bit better than Stroud at this point. Not necessarily that I would, on their present contracts, pick them in that order, but I'd probably, if I had to go win one game, I might pick Justin Herbert at this point. Yeah, so I gave elite quarterback to the Ravens and the Chargers, Herbert and Lamar Jackson. So the Houston Texans, underdog, is a point taken away. Elite quarterback is a 0.4 for a net 0, and the most rootable team officially for Seahawks fans. There's no conflict with the Houston Texans, and that's who I'm rooting for. That's my number one. I'm probably Detroit Lions number 2, and then I'm pretty ambivalent after that. Do I want to see the Ravens win? I mean, I think it would help validate Seahawks fans' excitement about Mike Macdonald, but I don't really care that much about them. Those are my two teams. Houston, I would like to see a Houston-Detroit Super Bowl. We will not see that, but I would love to see that.